third generation, first purchased property in the 1930s. It's a living, breathing organism.
John Summerfield owns a vast cattle station nearly 900 kilometres west of Brisbane. But livestock is only one source of income. For years now, he's been a carbon farmer.
In 2006, that's when we first heard of carbon farming and started to investigate it at that stage.
He stopped clearing some of the land to let native trees regenerate.
We were able to provide evidence of the vegetation being cleared previously through satellite imagery, and then assess the regrowth that happened from that date.
He had his first carbon project registered with the government's Emissions Reduction Fund 9 years ago. The money's been a financial lifeline.
Basically, if we hadn't gone into carbon farming, we probably would have had to make some dramatic changes elsewhere in our lifestyle, and probably with the ownership of the property.
Scientific experts have given John Summerfield's project the thumbs up.
I've been to John's project, and I think it's what we had in mind when we thought about regeneration. So that country's been cleared before, he had the right, and it would be reasonable to expect he would clear it again, and he's chosen not to. And that is a regeneration project.
Carbon farming's changed a lot since John Summerfield first started. It's now a multi-billion-dollar industry. For every tonne of carbon dioxide stored in the trees, participating landholders get a carbon credit. They can sell the credits to the government or into a private market with soaring demand from companies that want to offset their own emissions as businesses adopt net zero targets. The key thing is that it's net zero. There'll still be a lot of businesses and industries making carbon dioxide emissions, and the idea is to balance that out. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, grow forests. At least that's the theory. The government's committed $4.5 billion to these schemes, a key part of Australia's commitment to achieve net zero emissions by mid-century.
It's seen as one of the best crediting schemes in the world. And we're seeing companies around Australia wanting access to more credits as part of their emissions reduction programs.
But one of Australia's leading authorities is blowing the whistle on these schemes.
An environmental market without integrity is not an environmental market, it's a rort. And I feel that Australia's carbon market is just that. It's degenerated to become a rort.
These credits don't really mean anything. And
ANU Professor Andrew McIntosh is an expert on environmental law and emissions reduction.
So it's going to be an ongoing part of Australia's climate policy for...
He was appointed by the Coalition Government to the Bushfires Royal Commission Panel, the Climate Change Authority, and for more than 6 years he headed the Emissions Reduction Assurance Committee, the integrity body for Australia's carbon offset schemes. This man has been a go-to guy for the Coalition. You've appointed him to various roles. He's served for the Coalition. You can't just dismiss his concerns.
Well, as I say, I think the facts are very clear. When you have people who are prepared to pay 10 times more for credits in Australia, when you see, and I hear regularly around the world, people looking at ACCUs, the credits that are created under the Emissions Reduction Fund, and the regard with which they are held, I have great confidence in the strength of this program.
I'm a big believer in these schemes and the ability to use offsets to help cut emissions and to help lower the cost of doing so. But what we've seen is a real difficulty, a real inability to operate schemes like this with high integrity.
3 schemes make up 75% of the carbon credits issued to offset Australia's greenhouse gas emissions. A native forest regeneration program known as human-induced regeneration, avoided deforestation, which pays landholders for not clearing trees they have permits to clear, and landfill gas, which pays waste dump operators to limit emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas.
It appears from the analysis we've done and the evidence we have seen that somewhere in the order of 70 to 80% of the credits that are being issued are markedly low in integrity. So basically payments are being made to people to not chop down forests that were never going to be chopped down, to grow forests that are already there, to grow forests in places that will never sustain permanent forests.
When you think forest, the dusty outback might not be the first place that springs to mind, but this is where most of the projects are located.
As time's gone by, we've seen that the projects have been in the wrong places. More and more we saw projects going into the arid zone. They're not landscapes that hold a lot of forest and trees.
Professor Don Butler is an expert on what drives vegetation growth in these regions. Under these schemes, people get paid to change how they manage the land by limiting livestock and keeping feral animals out. The theory is this is what causes the native forest to regrow. Don Butler doesn't buy it.
Ultimately, it's rainfall that drives tree cover change in arid zones. The forest cover may arise in a really wet year, but even if you're that lucky, it's going to go away again in the next drought. There won't be a permanent change.
What does that mean for reducing carbon emissions?
It means you've done effectively nothing.
We've done a full statistical study of that, which did show that the HAR projects are significantly increasing the regrowth, independently of climatic factors and rainfall.
When the rules were first developed, most experts assumed these carbon projects would only be on land that had been previously cleared.
The sensible place to put carbon projects is in areas where forests have been cleared. So you've then got a big opportunity to restore the forest and regrow the carbon in the landscape.
But the Clean Energy Regulator is approving carbon projects on land that's never been cleared and in areas that already contain a lot of vegetation.
What's happening is the regulator is allowing proponents to include areas that already contain mature trees all over them.
That means landholders are being paid as if they're growing trees in an empty paddock where new trees grow fast and store a lot of carbon.
The regulator is misapplying the rules, and as a consequence these projects are being grossly overcredited or overpaid.
Scientists from the CSIRO share these concerns. 730 has obtained emails and a report from the scientific agency's leading experts in this field. When asked whether the Clean Energy Regulator's approach was right, their response was blunt. They said the answer was no. The CSIRO scientists were unable to comment at this stage, but are preparing a further report slated for public release. You now have the CSIRO telling the Clean Energy Regulator the approach it's taking is wrong and will lead to overcrediting. Were you aware of that?
Look, at the end of the day,
the
advice the Clean Energy Regulator gives, the advice ERAC gives, is based on a broad range of sources. That's as it should be. And they have been enormously successful. Look at the outcomes. 100 million tonnes of abatement delivered, over 200 million contracted, 17 million in the last year alone, well-regarded credits that are well priced in the market, significantly higher than credits in other countries. These are the outcomes that matter.
So south of Alice Springs, if anyone's ever been.
Andrew McIntosh was replaced as head of the integrity body vetting the carbon programs by David Byers, a former mining and gas industry lobbyist.
We don't agree with some of the advice coming from a couple of CSIRO scientists, but we have thoroughly investigated that. There's been no lack of endeavour in trying to get to the bottom of that issue, and we found no evidence.
He doesn't share his predecessor's concerns.
I understand my predecessor has made some of those claims. We've investigated this thoroughly. We have done that very, very carefully, and we have come to a view, as I've described, that the abatement is additional to what would otherwise have taken place, that there is compliance with the method and all of its requirements, and that there is no evidence of overcrediting.
Although that thorough investigation endorsed the Key Forest Regrowth Scheme, the fine print and data revealed serious problems, including that a substantial proportion of projects in Queensland appear to have had a negative impact. Professor McIntosh led a team of 6 experts who studied satellite images of more than 100 projects. Half had gone backwards.
People didn't want to admit the mistakes that have been made, and they sought to bury what we had found. I think ultimately there's a lot of money at stake, and it's also an incredibly politically charged space.
The Clean Energy Regulator rejected all of the allegations as completely false. It said less than 3% of forest regrowth projects were under investigation for possible non-compliance. Previous material provided by Professor McIntosh had not been substantiated, and it has well-established, rigorous processes to address any potential conflicts of interest. There's a tension in the regulator's role. It's the primary purchaser of carbon credits, making it the main customer of the industry it regulates.
It makes the rules, it staffs the integrity committee, it enforces the rules, and it also buys the credits or makes the payments. Now, this is a textbook case of bad governance structure, and it should not be allowed to continue.
There's no doubt that done well, these emission reduction schemes can help combat global warming, but done badly, they're worse than nothing.
Low quality carbon credits are used to offset emissions from large polluters. That's actually making the situation worse. It's actually resulting in increased emissions because we get the increase in emissions from the large polluters, but we don't get the offsetting reduction.
If we keep on this way, we're effectively fudging the books and defrauding the future.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.